So hi, my name is Bart-Williams. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Knogle. And I'm going to talk about validating premises that we base the success of startups on, as opposed to assuming that they're true. So this will really resonate if you've had that painful experience of building something that didn't take off. Otherwise, it might just sound like, oh, that's just common sense. Well, if that's the case, I've got an anonymous quote for you. Profit from the mistakes of others, because you don't have time to make them all yourself. Now, an assumption is something that is defined as something that's accepted as true or certain to happen without any proof. So if you don't have any proof, it's an assumption. Now, everybody makes them. It just can cost a lot more if you're an entrepreneur, because there's a lot at stake. Apart from potentially the money from other people, there's all of you in it. Physical, mental, emotional, relationships, credibility. And if you're honest with yourself, you have no idea how it's going to go. It's a huge gamble. One of the places assumptions come from is how we perceive things. We say things like, it's a no-brainer, or that's a really cool feature, they'll love it. How do we know they're assumptions? If you don't have any proof, then it's an assumption. And another place that they come from is from our environments. We're all in our own worlds, based on places, things like where we live or who we hang out with, and it's kind of like water to a fish. We take it for granted, and just as it's uncomfortable for a fish to be out of water, so it is for us to be out of our elements. But that's what it takes. Getting out there and having conversations with the people and the customers whose problems you're saying you're trying to solve. Now, you want to start within your own networks, but you want to get out to other people that you don't know as quickly as possible. And it can be really interesting. You'll be amazed at what you can find out when you get people talking about what they care about. And it can also be fun. I've actually had a blast with this, and I'm going to share some of what's worked for me. And I'm not a natural networker or an outgoing person like that. You want to know if people care. And people other than you and who's in your circle. Even if it's a brilliant idea, you need to test it. Why? Because if you don't have any proof, it's an assumption. The other thing you want to do, well, the ultimate proof is finding that first customer that's going to pay you, right? And that's easier said than done. But that's why we're here. Because if you really use the customer development process and the build, measure, learn cycles, then you make that progress. What you're looking for is that combination of what's missing and causes enough pain that has your customer say yes to you. Now, it's not always obvious to them, but that's what you're listening for in the conversations that you're having with these various people. The more conversations, the better. But that also means that you've got to really focus on what's important. So if you go by the 80-20 rule, then 80% of your customers are going to use only 20% of your product. That's the 20% that you want to focus on, like what's in there. And your minimal viable product should be whatever you need to validate those assumptions. No more and no less, right? And it really takes a lot of discipline. To me, it's like meditating. You've got to keep bringing yourself back from all the distractions over and over again. This is not what early feedback looks like. It's more like being a human punching bag. But if you take the hits, you learn as you go, and you make progress. And you don't want to guess, and you don't want to assume and debate. You want to test, because if you don't have any proof, it's an assumption. Making things simple is not easy. But this is where you really want to get in the world of your customers, and you want to get clear on their assumptions. The difference is, you want to make their assumptions come true for them in your product. And the sooner you know whether or not your assumptions are valid or not, the sooner you know if you're going to need to pivot. This is where you're looking at, do you have value? Will it grow? These are your value and your growth hypotheses. If not, cut your losses, move on. So I said I'd share what's made it easy for me to kind of get out there and have conversations, because you can tell, as I'm sweating right now, this is not something that I necessarily enjoy. But I do love what I do, right? And I've done well enough that I have, made it this far in the game. But it's more to me for me than that. I also want to make an impact in the world and have a difference made by what I'm doing. So it helps in those times when I'm questioning myself. There's something to fall back on, that's bigger than me. But ultimately, the reason you start a business is to make money. And when you can get all of that working together and in the right balance, then you can't wait to get out and tell people what you're doing and what you're up to. It becomes natural, it becomes easy, and it's fun. Now, being an entrepreneur has been one of the hardest things that I've done. But there's nothing like it when it all comes together. You have to take the leap to get there. It just doesn't have to be a leap of faith. Thank you.